Good morning, good morning, good morning. We are super excited to have each and every last one of you here for our I Speak Life mental health tour, and we are elated to say the least. So much is going on, and we are glad to be in the land of the living. Super duper glad to be in the land of the living. So good morning to each and every last one of you. We are so glad that we are here, that we get a chance to be a part of your morning. We are glad that you understand the importance of what we're just trying to do in terms of observing National Mental Health Awareness Month. And of course, for those of you who know who I am, my name is Dr. Lakita Long, and I'm a mental health strategist, a wellness coach, and I believe that you cannot be well if you're not mentally well. And so in light of all those wonderful things, we are here on this morning, and we hope you guys are doing great. We just want to make sure all of our family has been able to connect with us. And so we are checking in with the fam on this day. And it looks like you guys are able to join us and to check in. And we thank you guys for the commitment to herald out what we're trying to do. For those who are going to be looking at this at another time, we salute you as well. We are grateful. We are committed to bringing the best of information as it pertains to how you become mentally strong, mentally well, and then spiritually astute. I am a believer in Jesus Christ. I'm fully sold out to that cause. And there are so many different things that throughout the years of my salvation and being in Christ, I've come to learn. And as the world systems continue to change and some become very diabolically opposed to that of believership according to biblical principles and things of that nature, it has become much more astute and much more firm for me that I would line up what I believe in terms of morality stuff, in terms of how I treat people, and more so just the process of even thinking. We're coming to a place in a time where people are really losing it because there are other things that are going on. And so as a way to just do my part, I want to be able to bring information that is coupled with biblical principles and psychological concepts to help people to just really come to a better knowledge of who they are. So for the last 25 plus years, we've had this wonderful journey of being able to be educated and spiritually relevated, if you will, to give people another chance to live. Some of my most damning cases and things that I have engendered have been because people have lacked information and or the high growth fear of even involving themselves in the world of mental health. I don't blame them. I remember the first time I walked through a psych ward, and I was young, and I wanted to just to see it and to get a feel for it, because as I stated before, and those who have walked with me and understand my journey, my oldest brother, Clarence C. Long III, he had a nervous breakdown when he was 18, and they had diagnosed him with paranoid schizophrenia, the first of our family, and an enormous eye-opener for me. But when I walked through the psych ward, I immediately got a sense that at this time I was also saved and filled with the Holy Spirit and all those types of things, and fully aware of my gifts and things of that nature. But I became instinctively aware that there is something else going on that is not told. And I think in my head and in my mind and my spirit, when I walk through the psych ward, I think I endeavored to say, I want to be a voice for those who no longer have a voice. And I said that because as I walked through, there were major things that, and this actually pertains to our topic for today, which is part 2 of mental health in the Black community. But as I walked through this psych ward, I got this really dreary sense that there was just this hopelessness and all of these things, right? And the people, when I would walk past their rooms and things of that nature, they're looking out of the window of the little rooms and stuff like that, the despair, but it was a despair beyond the diagnosis that they may have been given. And as people were going to various appointments, maybe they were meeting with, whomever, and so they were kind of walking with someone else into a place, and they would look at me, and several times, this is a God honest truth, several times, many other people would reach out to me and say, please take me away from here, take me away from here. And the Holy Spirit in me knew that there was some validity to that. And so it forced me to start taking some deeper looks at the conditions, how we treated, one people, and I didn't know how I was going to tackle that. So I decided to tackle it from a different perspective and work instead of wait till they got to, adulthood to be in a psych ward. I wanted to work with residential treatment facilities with children. And so I started pretty much there. And it was there that I started to, in my own way, unraveling the inhumane treatment that many were getting, particularly African Americans, because as it was stated to me, quote unquote, when these children get enraged, they are really enraged, right? And so this whole concept of mental health in the Black community is very near and dear to me, and we are missing the mark. Particularly, we're still missing the mark when we have people that are speaking about mental health in the Black community, and even if they are Black, but they have no actual information that can render a consistency of an ongoing treatment. And what I mean when I say treatment, I'm not necessarily talking about the psychodynamic aspects of mental health. I'm actually really also talking about this treatment about managing life cycles and life stuff. African Americans, Black folks, Negroids, whatever you want to call people, Blacks, have really, really gone through the gamut of stuff. I'm sure other races, but I'm not talking about other races at this point. When I read and look at history, when I look at everyday situations, it is so damning to me. It's so disheartening. Even doing the research to bring stuff today, tears in my eyes, because I thought to myself, my God, we couldn't win for losing. It was always something. It was always something. If it wasn't the people that were against us, it was the laws. It was the medical professions who, well, what happens to us if we're ever sick? So therefore, the distrust of medical professions was great, because who do we have to trust? They were diagnosing us much different than our white counterparts. And as Blacks started becoming more smarter and understanding it, they just avoided going to them altogether. So then it became this taboo where you don't share your mental health stuff that you got going on. And I think one of the things that tends to happen is when we do this, we really run the risk of living a stigmatized life and very, very depressed, anxious, traumatized, suicidal even type of life. And so today, I just want to kind of talk for a moment about the part 2 of mental health in Black communities, and that to some degree, Blacks have used mental health as a way to or use their status of having mental health as a way of showing some level of strength. So some people have come up with this whole concept that if I can endure and not have to go, I'm strong and this and the other. And I get it. It is heroic to feel that way and to believe that way. But I am telling you, when you are having these highs and these lows, and it is starting to affect your day-to-day operations and how you communicate with people, how you take on conversations, how you respond, and most importantly, how you make decisions. And so when we don't make decisions, and I've shared this before, we move and operate in fear. So the only way to delineate from moving into fear is the ability to make decisions. And when we have poor standing or a poor system of which we are gendering ourselves from making decisions, well, we're going to run into a whole lot of other stuff. So today, we're going to talk about part 2 about mental health in the Black community. I hope that this information has been insightful. I hope that it has brought you information concerning your own life, what you can do to turn things around, which is why I believe so much in CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. There's a whole dynamic aspect, a modality of treatment processing that allows people to reprogram, undo what they've learned. And that's the only way that we're going to grow. Undo what you've learned that is definitely not working for you, and make the conscientious decision that you're going to do some things that's going to work for you. Does that make sense? Okay. So welcome once again to the I Speak Live Mental Health Tour. And I am your girl, Dr. Lakita Long, super excited. Just excited to be able to do the work that I do. And for those who may be looking, or if you ever want me to come and speak, I am the founder and the happy creator of the Mental Health in the Church program initiative that allows us to be able to provide resources, information, and seminars to churches and church networks and faith-based communities. And so we're excited about that. You can check us out on the web, mhicnow.org, mhicnow.org. And we also a consortium for a training and consulting hub, and we do that work through the LDL Empowerment Group LLC. So we are glad to be able to come to you and provide those types of services. So let's get to the reality of where we need to be and go from there. All right. So a great resource to get us started, and I want to put out there that I think it's always important to put out various resources that you can go and look at. It's a wonderful resource. You can check it out. It's called blackpast.org, blackpast.org. It's a great resource and website for African Americans to learn much about a lot of things. They've taken time, energy, resources to do the research on a variety of different topics. Blackpast.org. All right. So let's go. Excuse me for a moment. All right. Talking about mental health in the Black community, there are many nuances of facts that had to be addressed when we initially brought this conversation up in the last broadcast. As with many things concerning Blacks, we've always had to look at the 4 areas and factors that have plagued us for many years. And those things were and are racism, discrimination, poverty, and violence factors. Each of these consist of being what we know as stressors that perpetually affect ethnic racial groups. So any marginalized racial group, they will find those 4 areas, racism, discrimination, poverty, and violence, as a part of why there is an increase in either health disparities, mental health disparities, etc. It should be remembered that the Civil War freed nearly 4 million enslaved people across the South. But just because it freed those slaves, it did not lead to an enlightened understanding or attitudes from those that were in the South that were still able to have control over the freed folks of the South, especially when it came to mental illness. In 1895, Dr. T.O. Powell, which was the superintendent of the Georgia Lunatic Asylum, he began to observe an alarming increase in insanity and consumption of TB or tuberculosis amongst Black in his state. He contributed and attributed this to 3 decades of freedom. Now, I want you to hear the irony of why he thinks people were becoming much more insane, Blacks particularly. He believes that it was the 3 decades or 30 years of freedom, and he argued that when the former slaves got their freedom, it caused them to have little or no control over their appetites and passions, which led to excess and vices, which in turn generated a rise in insanity. Do you understand me? Did you hear what I just said? So basically, Dr. T.O. Powell stipulated, inserted, incited, put down on paper, and because he was a doctor, it would influence the mindset of many that those freed Blacks were increasingly becoming insane because they were free. What Powell did not factor in is the socioeconomic conditions, including poverty, racial discrimination, and the violence that was consistently increasing. During that time, the violence that was mainly seen was lynching, and it reached an all-time high. Between the times of 1890 to 1920, lynching was so prevalent that it was like a form of abuse, like you would whip a child or discipline someone that was nearby. They would string up African Americans in broad daylight and let people come and see. Some people would even bring their lunches. I mean, just some crazy stuff to show this kind of behavior. And during the beginning of the 20th century, African Americans began to face a different kind of problem as it pertained to their mental health, as it pertained to their physical health. And at that time, the Blacks were facing what's called eugenics. It was a eugenics movement. And this eugenics movement started in Great Britain in the 1920s, and it moved into the United States. One of the two parallel principles regarding the eugenics, and you've heard it, I've heard it, I've read stuff about it, it's just so crazy. Number one, it is stated that eugenics encouraged births among good people. So the eugenics movement wanted people to have babies who were considered to be good people. Well, they had already fixated in their minds that Blacks were not in that group at all. So they became a part of the second principle, sterilization of people that were deemed unfit to reproduce any more people in the earth, especially those with mental illness, those who were poor, and those who were accused of sexual promiscuity and criminality. Sterilization took its toll, and it focused primarily on Blacks in so many different ways that by the 1930s, it had just devastated a whole group. If you were in an institution, an asylum, you were sterilized. I want you to understand the effects that the healthcare industry had on African Americans, and you wonder why they wait. And no excuse. Understand that I'm not saying that you should wait, but they would wait until they're stage 4 and 5 of cancer. They had absolute legitimate reasons why. The untrustedness of the physician and the body of a Black person, it could not be trusted. It could not be trusted. And even today, as early as Beyonce stating it, Rihanna stating it, Serena Williams stating it, these three women have had babies and births. And in their own words, in their own thoughts, they talked about the horrific, and these are multi-million dollar women. So a little Black woman like me don't stand a chance. They felt like something was wrong with their bodies, during the process of being pregnant. And then afterwards, they knew something was up, and yet they still couldn't get the proper things. And they have money. So Serena had to advocate for herself, go past various folks, get second and third opinions to only find out that she indeed had this thing. And had they not found this thing in her, she'd be dead today. These are the types of things that took place, and it was targeted to Blacks. But you should know, and this is what really threw me off in a crazy way, that it was Blacks, Black men, Black women. But I want you to listen to the years that this stuff was going on, the sterilization that impacted the mental health of people, and was also put upon people who had mental health issues of the Black race. In 1970s, when did I say? 1970, just 52 years ago. 52 years ago. In North Carolina, what did I say? North Carolina and Alabama. What two states did I call on? They were still sterilizing Blacks in the 1970s. Oh my gosh. And who was not sounding alarm that this has to be wrong? They were sterilizing Blacks, and Black women were completely declared by the courts to be mentally defective. So what I'm saying is those who were declared by the courts, Black women, to be mentally incapacitated, they sterilized them. I want you to watch these numbers though. And going back now to 1960s, North Carolina, for example, 85% of the legal sterilization that took place were Black women. 85%. Psychosurgery in 1930s and 1960s was done on the brain because it was thought to have been able to help to bring down the cases of those who have mental defects. They called this lobotomy, and it provided itself as a treatment forbidding the brain to act, quote unquote, insane, and it brings back the brain's dysfunction. This is what they believe. And the diagnosis that was widespread going on in urban areas and in urban communities. So this lobotomy that was not just only performed on African Americans, but it was definitely done a lot more on African Americans. And then, of course, they started to try to professionalize it, and of course, it was done on our white counterparts. What I thought was very interesting as it pertains to mental health, and I'm looking at the parallelization and the correlation between mental health and the history of mental health for Blacks, and also the physical health and how lined up it is. One of the things that I came across was this whole notion of PPD, which is postpartum depression, or known as the baby blues. It's known to be a thing that shows up in the form of great sadness, crying, mood swings. They happen after the birth of a child. This postpartum depression occurred much more deeper in African-American women than in any other person, period. At least they were able to identify this. And the number said 40%, which is a lot. And yet it is true. When I'm talking to individuals in my counseling, one of the things that we have identified when we do a life chart is that most women have had depression for quite some time. Most older women look back and they say, wow, I didn't realize it, but I was depressed after I had my children. But you know, you're taught to keep going. You're taught to keep moving. I'm grateful that you kept going, but it didn't mean that you didn't have the undercurrent of the anxiety and the depression still ruling your life and sitting, waiting for the time where it could wreak havoc. So the 40% of postpartum folks was Black women. Mostly because they had also all these other additional issues. It just compounded upon the diagnosis of PPD. Some of those conditions were financial distress, domestic violence, poor access to healthcare, single parenthood, poor or inadequate child care. Postpartum depression was another manifestation of mental illness in African-American women. And it was so severe and so serious. So there are many different layers to this whole notion of mental health and the Black community. And I wanted to make sure that we understood that these layers cannot be forgotten and that we must deal with them. Get inside of a treatment facility or a treatment opportunity and decide to look at your life and really, really decide this is not the way that I know I'm supposed to be. I might have had to experience some stuff, but this is not the way by far that I'm going to continue on to be. Some of the things that I've seen in the Black community and in Black people that have really, really sounded the alarm for me, that mental health is definitely something that needs to always be talked about, is the immense sadness. Sometimes we'll go to a funeral, and I've seen this happen, and I'll see people overly exaggeratively sad, or they're in conversation with someone, they become overly sad. Well, sometimes for that Black person, the sadness is really a byproduct of being sad for a really, really long time and no place to express it legitimately or legitimizing their sadness. So they'll go to a funeral and will overindulge in the emotions of sadness and so forth and so on. Or they will become a part of a plight. If someone's kid is murdered, then they will take on the burden of being sad about it, because it's also just a reflection of the community as a whole. You know, when you think about the Eric Gardners, you think about the George Floyds, and God, there's so many that I could just name that we should not be named. The, you know, Martins and the God, just so many, right? The Oscar Grants and things of that nature. So I want you to think about something, and this is to my Black community, that sadness, self-injurious behavior, suicide, suicidality, attempted suicide, depression, all forms of depression, anxiety, various areas of anxiety, phobias, things of that nature, trauma, abuse, and self-hatred. These are some of the things that I pulled out because I know it is something that plagues many in the Black community, this inability to understand who and what you are in real time. And so these things that I've just named ends up impacting Black people in a major, major way. And even those who have the knowledge of Jesus Christ and walk with the authority of knowing God's word and hiding yourself in the word of God, still deal with a lot of these various issues. And as it pertains to African American folk, you guys, you know, like anything, we've got to really take a look at our lives. This is just what I believe. And I could be wrong. I would love to hear your feedback. We cannot blame people forever, but I do think that we have a responsibility to hold folks accountable, which is why I'm in great support of the ADOS, African Descendants of Slave, and who are trying very hard. Particularly, I know there's this chapter in Sacramento. I get on a lot of other stuff and listen to a lot of things. They're trying very, very hard to get California to be the start of reparations towards Blacks, because California, unfortunately, has not always, it's not been kind to African Americans, to Blacks. As a matter of fact, I read that a lot of, and let me go back because I don't know if I have stated that a lot of the press of stuff took place in California. A great amount of sterilization and all that kind of stuff took place. And so when you've got people knowing that someone's out to harm, that's how, at least how it feels, but it changes the game. It changes the game. It changes the way we see our lives. And I'm here to tell you, I just wouldn't let myself be in a space. I just wouldn't let myself be in a space where I'm not going to be my very best self. Every single day, I would encourage you. And if you've never had therapy, I encourage you, get some counseling, get brief counseling. You can check us out, Inspiring You Counseling Center. We are doing brief counseling sessions. It is amazing. It will help you. They're 30-minute sessions that allow you to really dive into what you got going on. You can, go to our site. You can make a phone call to us, and we'll put it up on the page as well. But you definitely should be thinking more intensely about how you are going to live your life mentally. This is what I'm talking about. It's the mental part that I'm talking about, right? It's the mental part. And so, oh, thank you guys. You guys are really on here. So I'm just wanting to just spend the time. And if you are struggling in your area, you are Black, and you know that you've got some mental health stuff kind of going on, do not take it for granted. Do not think that it's nothing. Do not, and I see all of you guys, wow. Yes. So many laws, so many things, you guys. And many are still not free in their minds. And while I have just about a minute or two, let me just express to each of you the realities of the times that we're living in. I woke up early this morning, and I always do my quiet time very early in the morning. And I just felt this really impressing to tell the people, and you be the people. And the people is whoever hears the message, right? It's not specific to Blacks, whites, whatever. But you be the people. And God really pressed it in my spirit. Tell the people, get their bodies cleansed. I'm telling you, I was doing some research and I'm reading a book that is just phenomenal by Dr. Arnold E. Ehret. And he talks about having a mucusless diet, the best way to heal your body. And as I was reading it, it is so true. He was like, when you go on a fast and you are no longer able to maintain and be in that fast because of headaches or whatever, you are already diseased in your body. Oh, already. And to whatever degree that you are not able to continue the fast, your body is shutting down from the natural space that God has called it to self-heal. Headaches and nausea and, all these things, and you're unable to fast. The fasting is the treatment. He believes firmly, and I'm starting to believe it too. I believe it as well. Not starting to, I believe it as well. Fasting is the first treatment that one should focus in on concerning diseases and various things going on in the body. I also believe that to be true concerning mental health issues as well. So many assaults go on against this brain, against this mindset, against the experiences that we've had, and we are unaware, may I say, we are unaware of how these mental health things are affecting our lives in a major, major way. They just are. And so I just want to encourage you guys, do not hold this stuff. People are snapping. One lady was an aunt to a 3-year-old African-American woman, took her nephew to the pier area. I think it's in, I want to say Detroit, and pushed him off the pier into the water, ocean water. They got him, but the poor baby had a heart attack and he died. She snapped and pushed a healthy baby in the water and watched him. Talk about what kind of hatred is that? So, and is it hatred or is it mental health or is it? So go get checked if you need to. I pray that the information, there's so much more that I could share, so much more regarding mental health in the Black community, and I will continue to keep talking about it. But tomorrow you want to make sure you're on here because we are talking about mental health in the church and the undiagnosed issue. Oh, we're going to go with it tomorrow, the undiagnosed issue of the things going on in the church. So thank you so much for the wonderful opportunity. It's my honor, my pleasure to be able to come to you guys and provide some of what I hope is information, inspiration, and motivation to change your life one chat at a time. It's been a fabulous time. I'm Dr. Lakita. Thank you so much for hanging in there with us with our I Speak Life mental health tour. God bless and God keep you is my earnest prayer. Bye-bye.